Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at Dynasty sells. Make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. Let's jump into our first player, Mike Evans. So obviously, Evans has been a productive wide receiver for years. But even in the context of his very successful career, his 2023 season is somewhat of an outlier. Let's compare Evans in 2023 to his 3 years with Tom Brady from 2020 to 2022. So with Brady, he played 47 games, 4.7 catches, and 67.3 yards per game, 33 total touchdowns in those 47 games. Then in 2023, 17 games, 4.6 catches, and 73.8 yards per game, and 13 total touchdowns. So he mysteriously, despite having a worse quarterback, had more yards per game, more touchdowns per game. Do we think that added efficiency was real or is unlikely to continue in his age 31 season? So let's jump into all of my reasons for why Mike Evans is a dynasty side. I have many reasons. My redraft rank versus the consensus, touchdown regression, age, Baker Mayfield regression, and we're heading into a good time to sell players like Mike Evans. So one of the big issues with Evans is that a lot of managers are just assuming, well, he's going to be a wide receiver 1 this year, or at least close to it. And his consensus redraft rank agrees. Not quite, but they have him at wide receiver 15. I have him lower at wide receiver 20. Why is that? Great question. So in 2023, Evans had 6 more targets and 4 fewer receptions than Chris Godwin. So very similar volume, but scored 13 touchdowns to Godwin's 2. That is not going to happen again on the same target numbers. That's very unlikely. If you think about it, 6 times as many touchdowns on fewer receptions, that's not going to happen again. But even worse than that, because you could say, oh, maybe Evans is better at scoring touchdowns, whatever you want to say. What's definitely not going to happen is that Evans is going to score 13 touchdowns if Baker Mayfield throws 28 like he did in 2023. That is not going to happen again. That is basically not possible. Evans did. Now, some might say, well, he scored touchdowns with Tom Brady. He did. But he scored 13 and 14 touchdowns as Tom Brady had 40 and 43 passing touchdowns those years. That's usually what it takes. It's hard to score more than a third, and that's really good, of the passing touchdowns a quarterback throws. Baker Mayfield did have a strong year last year, but Dave Canales is gone. I don't think it's going to be better. I think it's a question of if it's going to be the same or worse. Additionally, the point scoring season is here. So if we're moving off vets, which is kind of my last point here, now is the time. We see week 1, people are thinking, I got to set a lineup. People are looking at lineups now. Now is an opportunity to sell a player like Mike Evans when you would not have been able to do so throughout the offseason. And lastly, if we get to week 1 and we see, let's say Chris Godwin is better. The sell window's gone. It's over. For older players, it's gone that quick. You don't get a second chance. If you're 25, you're going to get 100 chances. But if you're an older player, you're not going to get 100 chances. You can get 1 chance. And this is your opportunity to get out from under Mike Evans while you still can. Now, how are you going to do that? Great. Another great question. I have 3 ideas. Idea number 1, sell Mike Evans in a 25-second for Devonta Smith. All of these are from the Dynasty Daddy trade database. It was there. Try it. You never know. You get a much younger asset who's going to produce similarly, but 5 years younger. Just signed a big contract too. Sell Mike Evans for Rashee Rice. Probably too late to do this, but this wasn't there. Dynasty Daddy trade database was there yesterday. So some people are doing it. Maybe they're not paying that much attention. Maybe you could get this done. And this was there too. Sell Mike Evans for 25 first. Try it. You might say not in my league. Try it. Try multiple teams. You never know. It was there. It was there. It really happened. I didn't make it up. So try it in your league. These are ways you can move off of Mike Evans. Our next player, Zamir White. And I feel like we've been here before, but we'll do it again because it's getting worse. In 2022, as a 4th-round rookie, he had 17 carries for 70 yards. He did nothing. And then in 2023, he was okay as a backup to Josh Jacobs. 104 carries, 451 yards, a touchdown, 4.3 yards carry, and 15 catches for 98 yards. Now, over the last 4 weeks, he was the starter. He averaged 21 carries, 99.3 yards, and 2.3 catches and 15 yards a game. Good for 15.2 fantasy points per game. The only reason he wasn't higher is because he only scored 1 touchdown. And he was a solid low-end RB1 during that period. However, there are so many things that are wrong with Zamir White. Clear committee in preseason and camp. Burst and injury concerns, and maybe just wasn't all that good in the first place. He was drafted in the 4th round. Now, White split time with the starters. Jeez. Time with the starters. In preseason week 2 with Alexander Mattison and Dylan Lobb. He also remained in the game with the second string, rotating with Dylan Lobb and Amir Abdullah. There's no doubt that the Raiders are using committee in their backfield. I would be surprised if White played more than 60% of the snaps at best. I fully believe, actually, that the Raiders will play 3 running backs in week 1. White will lead the early down work. Mattison will spell him. And Lobb or Amir Abdullah, probably Lobb, given how well he's played, will take a 3rd down role. For Dynasty, the fact that White cannot truly shine ahead of known mediocre, like Mattison and Abdullah, and inexperienced players who played at a lower level of competition like Lobb is very scary long term. Additionally, we have to remember that White has had 2 ACL tears, and he was never a workhorse in college. Never, not even once. Literally, the only time in his college or NFL career where he was a workhorse for multiple straight games, a 4-game stretch, was the last 4 weeks of last season. He did not do it even once in college. Not even once. He had a game or 2 here and there, but never, ever consistently. And it was probably when other players were injured. So very, very concerned about Zamir White, especially with the negative reports I'm hearing recently. Now, how do you get out from under Zamir White? Well, let's look at the Dynasty Daddy trade database, which will be my new source, I think, for trades on the show. It's very, very complete. I recommend. Great database. Great database to look at for trades. Number 1, sell Zamir White for 25 first. It's in there. It was in there. It happened. Is it going to happen in most leagues? No. Did it happen in a league or 2? Yes. Try it. Try it. What's the worst thing? You get a rejection? Why not try it? Maybe more realistic. Sell Zamir White for Chris Godwin. I'm pretty kind of what I talked about in Mike Evans section. I'm probably higher than consensus on Chris Godwin, lower than Mike Evans compared to most. So I think you're going to be able in a PPR league to trust the production you get from Chris Godwin more than Zamir White throughout the year. And then lastly, this one I think is kind of interesting. I see trades like this. This was in there too. Zamir White for Aaron Jones in 26 second. I like this because we keep the production. We still have Aaron Jones that we can play right now. And long term, the 26 second is worth more than anything else. My guess is when we get to 2026, the second will be worth more than Aaron Jones will probably be out of the league, or Zamir White, who will probably be a backup at that point at best. So this would definitely be a trade I would do. And I would look to explore other moves to move off of Zamir White before it's too late. If you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. Tiers begin at just $6 a month and include, I was supposed to put this up there. Oops. That's what you get. And tiers begin at just $6 a month and include all of that. Redraft and start sit content will only be on the Patreon, not Twitter, not on the YouTube. The YouTube will remain Dynasty Fantasy Football focused even in season. I had a lot of success with that last year. I'm going to continue that this year. But if you want redraft or start sit advice, that will be on the Patreon only mostly in Patreon Discord and in DMs as well. If you want to know more about what I'm offering, check out my why you should join the Patreon video on the channel. I'm probably going to do another one of those right before the season starts to focus a little bit more on start sit and that particular offering. But there is one why you should check out the Patreon. Check it out and you'll see all of my offerings. I think it'll explain it better than I can in this short promo. And lastly, I really appreciate everyone who signed up and any new patrons who joined. There've been a few lately. I'm always a believer in you don't get what you want unless you ask for it. So that's why I aggressively market it, because if I don't, no one's going to sign up, right? I mean, if I don't believe in it to market it, why would anyone sign up, right? So that's why I continue to talk about it because I still believe it's one of the best ways you can win your fantasy leagues. Now, once again, I probably sound like a broken record, but Najee Harris is a dynasty sell for me, my last one in this video. Harris has had a lot of volume, but he has not done very much with it. I mean, he really hasn't. The best thing he's done is play 51 of 51 games in his 3-year career. He's been available. That's good, but he hasn't really done anything else. 2021, 307 carries. That's a lot. 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3.9 yards a carry, 74 catches, 467 yards, 3 touchdowns, 17.7 fantasy points per game. Unfortunately, that receiving volume was due to the aging Ben Roethlisberger. Never came back. 2022 obviously went way down. 272 carries, 1,034 yards, 7 touchdowns. Still inefficient at 3.8 yards a carry. 41 catches, 229 yards, 3 touchdowns. 13.1 fantasy points per game. Were in decline. Then last year, Jaylen Warren took more work. 255 carries for Najee Harris, 1,035 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4.1 yards a carry, 29 catches, 170 yards. So pretty abysmal in the passing game. 11.5 fantasy points per game. So his PPR points per game has declined every year. Do we usually want players in decline? No, we usually don't want players in decline. Why Najee Harris is a dynasty sell? Absolutely miserable advanced stats, and they're horrible. The Steelers declined his 5th-year option. There's a sell opportunity with Jaylen Warren injury and also some positive camp reports about Najee Harris. I'll believe what I see on the field over those. Somehow, Harris had a negative 38.4 expected points added in 2023, 140th among running backs. That bad. The sad part is, it's not even his worst season. He was worse in 2022 and also extremely negative in 2021. He is an abysmal player. Abysmal. I mean, he has been awful. Last year, 3.9 true yards per carry, 36 among running backs. Now, you might say that's not that bad. That's his best mark. He was even worse in 2022 and 2021. Why would the Steelers commit to him in 2025? He hasn't shown anything worth committing to. NFL teams are learning that these totally ineffective volume eaters who the only thing they do well is eat volume are not valuable. They're learning that lesson. Finally, it's taken them about 20 years. And worst of all, Najee Harris is not Joe Mixon or Rashad White, who at least adds something in the passing game. They add something there. Najee Harris doesn't add anything there. He is not good in that area. He only did it as necessity in 2021. And when they found someone else to take that role, they gave that role away. Jaylen Warren has a hamstring injury, but he's going to play week 1. I think that's becoming pretty obvious, but it might open up a slight sell window for Harris if people think they're going to get a little bit more out of him. Now, to contrast Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris, Warren was good in 2023. Same offensive line, but he managed 4.9 true yards per carry, 6th among running backs, 74 targets, 5th among running backs last year. When Warren comes back, he will be the more fantasy relevant player, not Najee Harris. So that's a very big concern. Now, some trade ideas. I mean, sell Najee Harris for Tony Pollard and a 25-3rd. I'd rather just have Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard was, I think is going to be better this year than Najee Harris. This one was in there too. Sell Najee Harris for Christian Kirk. Absolutely. I would absolutely do that. Christian Kirk is just far better player than Najee Harris. Even though there are some negative things going on with Christian Kirk, I would still rather him over Najee Harris. And then I'd just take a 25-2nd and 25-3rd. If I could just move on from Najee Harris, not have to deal with Najee Harris, I would be happy to do that and sell him. Now, we went a little bit long, so we'll probably push the Patreon questions to the next video. But if you like the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty, redraft, start sit, and more. Every sign-up helps support my independent fantasy football content. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.